Hey everyone, nice to be here in the ETC. I think this is my eighth time, so I've been here since the very beginning, and pretty good that it's in a really nice location. I really like Paris and Brussels, but this is really cool. I got to wear my shorts, so enjoying very much. But ETC is a really special place for all of us. It's a great venue to get builders together. This is where a lot of innovation gets built. A lot of interesting solutions and technicalities get debated. It's a place where actually a lot of DeFi has been born, and a lot of work that we have done in Aave in the past has come with the discussions that we had in the previous years. So I hope you really enjoy. And today's talk is all about supercharging DeFi and about a big opportunity. So this is not just something that we're building from Aave and focusing on improving our own stack or improving DeFi, but actually unlocking really new, interesting opportunities that any one of you can actually build and participate. So one really interesting development in DeFi has been that I think an environment today for DeFi is really positive in the sense that there's a lot of TVL that has been growing. There's a lot of innovation at the moment happening, and a lot of DeFi is actually built upon native crypto assets. But at the same time, there's one big category that is keeping building up is the real-world asset category. So real-world assets aren't really, in the sense that they aren't really something that complex. It's pretty much about bringing value that exists in the traditional world, traditional finance, bringing that on chain, making it more transferable, programmable, and accountable. And now, what we're trying to achieve is to use the exact technology that we've been building so far, agnostically to any types of assets that we will see in the future on chain. So I see the finance progression moving, if you think about like tens of thousands of years being prescripted to playboards, for example, and later finance moved into paper, which made it lighter to carry, for example, coins and whatnot, and recent decades into digital. And every single medium adds a different type of a property, and these properties can be used in a different way. So finance being on digital in the past decades means that everyone has access to that information, can read that access, and can actually trade across globally. Now the finance is moving on chain, which at the same time means that you have a new type of substrate, a new medium that has a new types of properties. And those properties are about creating something that is more resilient, less single point of failures, more transparent, and more auditable. If you look at the past few decades of the evolution of finance, we've seen a lot of finance moving to digital in different ways, starting with internet, with e-commerce, getting actually suppliers, sellers to be able to pay with online. And later we saw, for example, Stripes making it really easy to actually put your credit card online feeling trusted. That's innovation on a experience level. And then you see different kinds of peer-to-peer payment applications like Venmos, Cash Apps, and thanks to horrible banking experiences, we've seen a lot of finance coming into fintech, and fintech applications being able to capture a lot of market share. And now, the past decade we've been working on is how to actually get all this utility into more decentralized mediums. And we saw the involvement of Bitcoin in value transfer. We saw the involvement of Ethereum as a programmable computer. the best programmable computer, if you ask me, because it's the best place to build at the moment with tooling that you have as a DeFi builder. And now, more recently, a few years, decentralized finance. So all these algorithms that we've been building as a community and tokenized assets. So it's interesting to notice that most of the people are online at the moment. So they're living on a digital substrate. It means that essentially over 60% of the population has some sort of a digital wallet. It's not on chain, but they have some sort of digital means of interacting, settling transactions. And we have over 5 billion individuals online today. And it keeps growing. A lot of the adoption has happened in digital finance at the moment. And the continuation that we do is how to bring this mass into on-chain. So why are we doing this in the first place? 8 years ago, or let's say 9 years ago, when I started building ETHLand, the idea was to build something really cool and exciting, something that achieved like a personal goal. It was more of a hobby. But I was building finance before that, namely fintech. And what started as a hobby, as a small project, became a bigger project, became a community, became Aave, what Aave is today, and becoming a really large category on-chain. So DeFi, for me, as of today, for example, it's more about building efficient algorithms. It's about creating also fair financial services, global access, and DeFi is the only technology that actually can do that in a borderless way. It's a way to distribute yield, financial opportunities equally, and actually preserve wealth in a world where wealth is eroding, payments are eroding, payroll is eroding. And we're moving to a world where everyone has to think about their financial sovereignty. And what is better place to do finance than a open protocol, an open environment like Ethereum, where everything is connected, whatever you build. So if you think about it, we achieved so far at the moment with DeFi, but there is a really big opportunity that we have to achieve. And this is a multi-trillion-dollar opportunity to bring these traditional assets, traditional value on-chain. There's real estate, there's government bonds, there's equities, there's funds, corporate bonds, and there's a bunch of other categories of assets out there that could be more efficiently handled on a transparent ledger, more programmable environment. And this is just what exists today. So if we actually are able to get all this legacy stuff on chain and create these efficiencies, what we could actually build beyond that. What could exist that doesn't exist because of these inefficiencies, lack of transparency, and most important, especially for developers, lack of programmability. So my statement is that DeFi will win. And I keep saying that. Why? Because DeFi is not really known publicly. If you ask your friends, do you know about DeFi? Well, maybe your friends will know what is DeFi because you're all friends and you travel to these events and you all are using Aave or other DeFi protocols and whatnot. But if you ask outside of our community, a lot of people will say that they don't know, but they know the fintechs. While in the meanwhile, DeFi is growing quite fast. Aave as a protocol has more value than asset under management of some of the biggest fintech brands we know. We don't have, as a whole segment in DeFi, the equal amount of users, not even close, but that's something where we're going towards. Aave has a particular positioning in the sense that we focus quite a lot on bringing DeFi to become more accessible, more easy, thinking not just the protocol angle, but also the product angle. How we make this infrastructure very robust, but at the same time, very usable, whether it's institutionals or whether that's retail. And Aave DAO has been a great examples of a decentralized organizations that has been able to achieve a revenue-generating decentralized protocol, something that is actually sustainable. And there are a few other great examples in DeFi, and we're very early on. And just to explain how important this is, as a startup founder, you might understand how basically difficult it is to actually make a successful startup and make that sustainable, but it's even way more harder to actually create a sustainable DAO, coordinate with all the participants, and actually produce revenue, create something sustainable that then can produce more value into the ecosystem. Yeah, so what's holding us back from mass adoption? I think we're getting closer in terms of the interest that it is today. So there needs to be clear value proposition. So what we're actually building and solving real problems and having good solutions. And I think it doesn't really, we don't get far if we solve cumulative issues. If we want to compete with traditional finance, if we want to change the world, we want to do things 10 times better. Your product needs to be 10 times better. Everything we do needs to be much more better than the old world. Especially when we bring the traditional assets, the traditional value on chain, we have to offer something that is much more better. There needs to be a better value proposition. Simplicity and accessibility is a key thing. Who are we building for? And the audiences. And how do we get towards the consumer audiences? And I think now is the best time to build DeFi. The best time to build DeFi before that maybe was 2 years ago. But now it's the best time to build DeFi. There's more regulatory clarity now than ever before. And there's more interest in DeFi, not just in our space in general, but from institutions and even from governments. But this doesn't mean that it's really, there's full clarity on regulation. There's still organizations that think that CBBDCs are the way to think about finance, money in the future. And I think that's a radical threat for decentralized finance. Because decentralized finance is about giving the power to you, the people, whereas central bank digital currencies are about controlling more of that value that you create even further. So one important aspect of this usability is that what if DeFi was actually easy? And I think we have different challenges when it comes to decentralized finance. And these challenges range from actually the user level, interaction level, the application level, but also how we build protocols. Building protocols is always hard because you always think that you are building something that is unopinionated. But no such thing actually exists because whenever you touch something, you always add an opinion. And it's a question of how much and how little at the same time. So what I think is that all these challenges are widely known. We come to these events every year to talk about the UX fragmentation of liquidity. We see more L2s. I'm pretty sure there's another L2 being launched today or tomorrow announced, and day after tomorrow, and we have these fragmentations and we don't really know what to do. And obviously we have static risk or dynamic risk, and how do we add parameters around those, that type of a risk. Also, what is the developer incentive actually to build? And I meet a lot of developers every year that actually build amazing things, that actually progress the space. And one of the challenges is actually how you can incentivize your users to use your product. What is the actual way to drive liquidity? That's a really big problem at the moment. And that problem is a good one because it means that there is a lot of innovation happening in these rooms. And then we have another angle, which is the institutional angle. So institutions might have different types of requirements, customization, how do you think about compliance, should they even think about compliance in the first place, permissioning, permissionless architectures, how to navigate that whole set of elements. So when it comes to Aave V4, there's few principles when we designed and architected the whole protocol. And a lot of the previous versions were built around capital efficiency, risk management, and I would argue that V4 basically is in between somewhere. You have a lot of capital efficiency with the E-modes. You have more granular risk management features as well. So one important thing for us, and this was the paramount, is that what we want to build is something really secure and resilient. And resiliency is something that also grows over time. So Aave being able to actually host over 43 billion net deposit really tells that people trust Aave and they trust DeFi. And that is a really big statement. If you go a few years back, even participants in our space necessarily weren't using DeFi. They were using the centralized alternatives. So what happened between, let's say, 2020, 2021 and 2024 and 2025? So FTX is one thing that happened, right? We also saw a lot of centralized lending protocols or centralized businesses that provide loans, provided yield, for example, that actually went bust during that period. And at the end were managing their risk so horribly that they were using DeFi in the back end because that's all they could actually do at that point, because they couldn't add any value. So virtually all lending that existed mainly in these centralized platforms moved into DeFi, which is amazing. And I think DeFi has a stronghold now on this category. And I think the same will happen with trading, with swaps, and other types of instruments. With perps are already pretty heavily on-chain utilized, and so forth. Just to give you an example, in a really down cycle turn, Aave liquidates over 200 million worth of value just in a few minutes. And that is, and automatically, regardless if everyone is sleeping or awake, the protocol just executes the code, and you have participants that are taking these opportunities automatically. So resiliency is the key. How do we build more resiliency? Because that means more safer protocols, better DeFi, and less problems for the space. And then modularity. How do we actually create a protocol that allows connectivity? So if we build something that is really interesting, empowers you to build, how someone else can come, build another block, and that block could actually be integrated into the protocol, providing more value and becoming modular and also customizable. So how do you take a few of these blocks and customize for yourself to your use case? And also the big problem that I mentioned before, how do we reduce the issue of liquidity fragmentation? How do we serve everything that exists on chain, provide value, but at the same time, we don't fragment the liquidity? And then more tools for risk managers. How we allow third-party risk managers to come and have additional tools. So these were the main pillars of Aave V4 when we're thinking about design. So V4 is completely new architecture, a new type of design that we basically learned over time and we're thinking about with our team. We spent actually roughly a period of a year with our SVP of engineering, Emilio, and our smart contract engineering team to think about now that Aave has actually proven its product market fit within DeFi, what will be the next step? How do we cater and ensure Aave could be a technology that could be used agnostically, not just native crypto assets, but also more traditional assets as they're coming on chain? So the big architectural change is to move to a modular hub and spoke model. So this architecture allows to innovate new types of borrow configurations and reducing and segregating the risk, while at the same time all these different borrow configurations and customizations have the same access to the liquidity. So the liquidity becomes accessible to any innovation that will happen in the future within the Aave ecosystem. And also thinking from the interest rate perspective, instead of having one rate for all, how do we actually create interest rate markets within the Aave protocol that are subject to actually how much risk you're bringing into the protocol? If you're bringing less risk, you should pay less. If you're bringing more risk, you should pay more for that, but not the other way around. And governance is a really interesting part of, well, how we actually create resilient governance and at the same time benefit of the opportunities that a decentralized DAO provides, while actually add a lot of configuration and flexibility how each of these hub and spoke combinations can actually be governed. And capital efficiency comes from the aspect that even if you have segregation on the risk, you have still access to a common pool of liquidity. And the way to think about the modularity is that Aave V4 will be more like a plug-and-play system where innovation will happen really fast because you can add these spokes that are bringing some sort of a novelty into the protocol to tailor a specific use case, whether it's happening natively on chain or is an institutional use case. So the main kind of like architectural change is the unifying liquidity of the Aave protocol. So how does it work? So effectively, every user that we have that is coming and supplying liquidity into Aave and borrowing always enters into the protocol through a spoke. So here we have the user, and this is what we call a liquidity spoke. Here's another one. So a liquidity spoke is a configuration of a borrow strategy. So it has all the elements of a loan-to-value ratios, what kind of assets could be listed to borrow against, liquidity, and all these risk-related parameters. So when a user comes, supplies into the core spoke, for example, those assets are then held in the main liquidity hub. And this liquidity hub actually then can give credit lines to every spoke that is attached to that liquidity hub. And you can attach multiple spokes there. So what's happening here is actually the liquidity is stored in one location, while at the same time, the risk is actually categorized and isolated in these spokes. So essentially, the liquidity hub can determine that the core, which is today the Aave core main market, can give a few billion worth of credit line to the spoke. So atomically, the core spoke has access to that liquidity hub. Then you might have some more novel spoke that is more riskier or higher on the risk curve. And in that case, the Aave core liquidity hub can give a credit line, but with a lesser amount. So the liquidity hub can actually control by its governor how much liquidity is allocated to what type of innovation and borrow configuration. And this is a what we call E mode. So you can efficiently go with a correlated assets, borrowing ETH against staked ETH, or borrowing one type of a stablecoin against another one to perform a more professional strategy and the same way as you do with Aave V3, but the main difference between Aave V3 and V4 is that all these configurations are in spokes, so they don't need to be integrated directly into the main functionality. And this gives a lot of flexibility and also scale. So what you can build. Of course, like we as Aave, particularly the Aave Labs team, we can't build everything. We can set down and lay down the foundations of the new architecture. We want to see innovation to thrive. We want to see more things being built in DeFi. And some of the things that could actually be built, some of them are already being worked, but some are completely new ones. But you could use, for example, LP shares as a collateral, as a separate spoke, borrowing against AMM liquidity, borrowing more cleaner way against BT assets. You can have isolation. And unlike previously in Aave V3, where assets are listed isolation towards the main market, you can create completely long tail asset compositions. So what I could imagine is that in the future, in the Aave ecosystem, we will have also long tail assets, more riskier assets, and we let actually the users to choose how they want to position them on the risk curve, essentially. You can create specific RWA vaults for different types of parameters as well, that you might have some sort of specialized liquidations. You can enable different types of interest rate strategies. You can create fixed lending, fixed yield as well. You can create also permissioning for institutional use cases if you want to have some sort of credentials, or it can be some other requirements that you want to whitelist. Essentially bringing back the Aave Arc 2.0. So anyone who is in TradFi will probably be excited about that. So from like the supplier's perspective, typically when you enter into the Aave app, you most likely select one market. You don't really explore much. But there is a set of users that, and that's the user that wants the least riskiest yield. They trust Aave, they trust DeFi and what we built, and they want to earn yield on their stablecoins. But there's also a significantly increasing amount of users that want to position themselves into the risk curve. And that means that with the new architecture, you can enter into liquidity hubs that has higher risk profiles. What it means for the borrowers is that borrowers have more choice and flexibility because spokes can compete with their strategies, asset compositions, and the segregation that it enables. One important feature that we also implemented is called risk premiums. So typically how the interest rate is settled in the Aave protocol is that everyone pays the same rate, for example, if they're borrowing USDC. And I think that's not the correct way to manage risk and reward. And in the future, what it means is that if you bring more risk to the protocol, you will be charged according to that risk. But if you have a very lean position, you're supplying only, let's say, in this case, staked ETH or wrapped Bitcoin, or let's say just pure Ethereum, you're paying the base rate. And the collateral composition of this creates a computed algorithm that creates so-called risk premium that you will pay here. So the pricing of the liquidity becomes based on the whole collateral composition that you bring. And we have a feature also called risk liquidity premiums that the governor can also set based on per asset. And this actually should price the pool to become the best place to borrow if you have least riskiest position or significantly more riskier position, you're priced more accordingly. So essentially, V4 tries to serve pretty much everyone. For users, it means simpler UI and UX. All these compositions of liquidity hubs and spokes can be actually abstracted away with routing and making it extremely simple. Provides lower gas, better rates thanks to the risk premiums. And for builders, this means that you can create wallet customization, you can access direct liquidity. So typically what happens in DeFi is new innovation is bootstrapped with rewards, tokens, or renting liquidity. But what happens when the rent period ends, the liquidity leaves, obviously. But what happens in Aave is actually you can innovate a new spoke and then request access to liquidity, and once it's granted, you have scale of liquidity for your innovation. And for institutions, we enable RWA credit markets, more compliance by customization, permission pools if there's appetite. So we actually see a wide range of innovation. So building with V4, it's going to be highly flexible infrastructure. We're going to have a DevNet very soon, in fact, next week. So we want to build publicly. We want to show the code base. If you're interested in contributing, you have some ideas, you can reach out and we can build together. You're going to have SDKs, really good developer documentation, and the most sexiest thing you can do is launch a spoke, because that will allow access to liquidity and you can innovate. So why this matters now, in my opinion, there's a lot happening now in DeFi. There's more appetite from governments, from institutions, from even retail on decentralized finance. And at some point, DeFi will converge with TradFi. We'll have a lot of native innovation, but we also need to get all these traditional businesses on chain and traditional infrastructure replaced by DeFi. Why? Because DeFi is better, faster, stronger. We have more transparency, we have more auditability, we have more better capability to monitor risk, for example. And in DeFi, you can monitor and assess risk every single block, which can be a few seconds or even a second, compared to traditional finance, where you can audit these systems on a quarterly basis, annual basis, or not even at all. So V4 is here for meet the moment, build something resilient, scalable, trusted, and very developer friendly. So yeah, we should build it together. Everyone who is interested should participate. If you have any questions, I will be today at the booth. We have an Aave booth here, and you can reach us out and we can chat a little bit more. And the last thing is that we have a last Aave code. If someone wants to participate, there's limited amount of tickets left. In fact, just a handful. Thank you so much.